Hi, welcome back to Wild Geese. I'm your host, Anna. Y'all, I got a new microphone. I heard you loud and clear. I know that the audio quality in the last episode was bad, and the episode before that was janky too. I will say I did put a disclaimer on the screen and in the episode description that I was aware that the audio quality was not great. Still, I got a lot of comments about it. I heard you. I know it is incredibly annoying to listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video that has bad audio quality. I get it. So I fully bought a new microphone because I think my last one just broke. And if this still sounds bad, I'm giving up, and this is the last episode of Wild Geese. I'm just kidding. But y'all, in 2 days, I have the first Wild Geese in-person event. I say event very loosely. It's a picnic in Central Park. I'm going to bring some blankets, a couple snacks, some pens and paper, a disposable camera for some cute pictures, and I'm just really excited to meet some of you in person. With that being said, I'm also nervous because I think that I am more of a one-on-one or small group type of person. I think I really thrive in that sort of environment. And then as soon as the group gets bigger, I tend to sort of go on my back heels and like fade into the background a little bit. And I am going to try my best not to do that and to stay fully present for y'all. But just know, if I ever meet you in person, I might be a little boring. Like, I've gotten a couple of comments from people that are like, I would love to be your friend. And I'm like, I don't think having a conversation with me is anything like watching one of these episodes. Like, I'm not just doing video essays all the time. Anyway, let's get into the topic of today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about literacy. And when I first proposed this topic, on my Instagram story, by the way, if you are not following Wild Geese Pod on Instagram, that's where I do all of the polls for what the next episode topic is going to be. When I proposed the topic, I proposed it as media literacy and literacy in general. And what I realized as I was preparing the episode is that what I'm really interested in right now is literacy more than media literacy. So really what we're going to be digging into today is how literacy is a safeguard against fascism, how it's a tool for agency for the masses, how an over-reliance on AI is actually threatening our very ability to think. And stick with me, I know I am also very fatigued with hearing about this because it's all over the place right now. Everyone's talking about it, but I think for good reason. We really need to talk about this. And what got me thinking about this topic in the first place is that article in, I believe, New York Magazine. I might be wrong about that. I don't know. I will link it in the episode description. It was called Everyone is Cheating Their Way Through College. And I didn't read it because it's behind a paywall and I don't want to pay for it. But I did see a lot of reactions to it on TikTok and all of that. And across the board, the reactions that I was seeing were people like pleading with college students and high school students to actually do the reading, do the writing, because otherwise you're paying an insane amount of money and then not actually getting the education that you paid for. But also, I think on a larger scale, you're giving up your agency as a human being. Like, we have to be honest with ourselves about the fact that ChatGPT and Claude and all of these things are going to be put behind a very steep paywall very soon. And do you really want to be reliant on something like that to function in your day-to-day life? Not only function in your job, but literally to have an understanding of how to navigate the world. And I actually took a screenshot of a TikTok from a creator named Sita and posted it on my Instagram stories. And it said, "There's never been an easier time to be smart and interesting. See the horrors presented in the New Yorker ChatGPT article. You can be smarter and more interesting than a good chunk of your generation if you even read one book a month and go to a few gallery openings every now and then. 2 books a month and a few trips to the art house theater makes you officially better than everyone else. A book a week, movies you can only find on Russian streaming services, a Cambodian jazz album, and an ability to critique surrealist art? Basically Susan Sontag. Take advantage of the fact that everyone's brain is basically turning into nougat and set yourself apart." And I posted that on the Wild Geese Instagram story, and I got a response that I totally respect and understand where this person is coming from. But they basically said, "I feel like this is not a great way of going about this issue. It really reinforces individualist thinking. You shouldn't just read to be better than everyone else. You should read because you want to read." And my response to that in this moment right now is that I actually don't care at all what your motivation is for reading. I just hope that you are reading.
Fill in the blank. When I read the Patty Lupone article, I thought,
I didn't read it. No, I don't read.
you don't have time to read.
I think it should be left up to the states to decide.
First of all, I think that that screenshot is largely coming from a very playful, comedic place. But even more than that, If it motivates a teenager to read more, to think of themselves as a thought daughter and aestheticize whatever thought daughter means and like romanticize Joan Didion and Eve Babbitt's and frame their life as dark academia and think that that makes them better than everyone else, that is totally okay with me if it gets them to a point where they are reading a book that changes their life and changes their worldview. I'm actually so okay if the thing that stops you from cheating your way through college or just picking up a book in general is that it makes you feel like you're better than everyone else. And in thinking about this conversation, I've been pretty constantly thinking about Ursula K Le Guin's speech when she accepted the National Book Foundation's Medal for Distinguished Contribution of American Letters. I'm going to put a little clip of what she said here. No, I'm not. Apparently that's a copyright issue, so I'm just going to read it. But I will link it in the description so you can go watch for yourself. Ursula says, I think hard times are coming when we will be wanting the voices of writers who can see alternatives to how we live now and can see through our fear-stricken society and its obsessive technologies to other ways of being and even imagine some real grounds for hope. We will need writers who can remember freedom, poets, visionaries, the realists of a larger reality. Right now, I think we need writers who know the difference between production of a market commodity and the practice of an art. Books are not just commodities. The profit motive is often in conflict with the aims of art. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words. Now, those words I remember distinctly talking to my mom about them when we were on a long road trip over a year ago. And at that point, I don't think I had even seen this speech. I think I had just seen it as a little quote, but I remember talking to her about it very soon after I first saw that quote. And since then, I swear it's like at least once a week I think about that. What Ursula says about writers needing to understand the difference between a commodity and an art has me thinking about the fact that this is an issue that goes way beyond even students. Like in the rapid adoption of AI use in the past year, there have already been authors that have come under fire for leaving chatgpt prompts in the book. I even remember seeing something about a newspaper, I believe out of Chicago, that was writing an essay about like musicians or something, and it listed songs and musicians that don't exist, which made it clear that the article was written by AI because AI is delusional and will literally make up lies. So I believe it made up like a fake song and a fake musician, and no one double checked this, and it actually reached print. And there's such a rush to produce and produce and produce. We end up making slop at the highest levels. I think reading and writing is our portal to imagination. I think we desperately need readers and writers at this moment for the reasons that Ursula K Le Guin spelled out. And those are like very big, noble, grand reasons. But even if you want to think about it in more of a like concrete day-to-day surviving life standpoint, I really liked the way that this person laid it out on, I think this is Twitter, I don't know. The username is Pinky Sensei. I don't know. I just saw a screenshot of it. But someone said, I think there's too much concern over literacy than the quality of life people are facing right now, especially young adults. The fuck is a book going to do when you're hungry and homeless? And this person responded, literacy is quality of life. It's not just about books. It's about being able to understand a lease, advocate for yourself, navigate systems, and even regulate your emotions to get better outcomes. People think literacy just means reading for fun or school, but it's functional, emotional, digital, financial. If you can't read instructions, write a coherent email, or understand a warning sign, you're navigating the world with a blindfold. Language gives us options. The more language you have access to, the more choices you can make and how you respond to hard situations, whether it's dealing with a landlord, resolving a conflict, or applying for aid. I keep talking about emotional regulation, something many lack, that is heavily tied to literacy. Can you articulate your needs, de-escalate a situation, reframe a setback? That's vocab and comprehension and self-awareness and reading and interpreting what's happening around you. Like, yes, we need housing and food, but if someone doesn't have the literacy to complete an application, explain their situation to a caseworker, or process rejection without spiraling, that affects their whole life trajectory. Literacy doesn't just help you read a book. Please. So I think that, paired with what Ursula K Le Guin was saying about needing to read and write in order to imagine a better world, is what makes me insanely nervous and sad about the prospect of kids, younger and younger, using ChatGPT to create a frictionless life, or so they think. And I just want to be clear that I don't judge students for using ChatGPT. I know that if that was a tool that was available to me when I was in school, I would have used it. And I probably wouldn't have done a ton of critical thinking about that at all. There was so much required reading throughout high school and college that I just fully did not do. And I skimmed it and I would find a quote here and there and I would write an entire essay based on that quote. I did the bare minimum through a lot of my schooling. And there were realistically only a couple of times that I really remember fully like jumping 2 feet into the material and giving it my all. So I get it. I think one thing that's hard when it comes to doing schoolwork is that you're often being told to read something by someone that you don't know or don't respect. I had so many teachers that I didn't think were cool people. So why would I want to read the thing that they're telling me that I need to read? Or even like required reading over the summer. I don't know who is telling me to read this, so I don't know if I respect their opinion or not. And the feeling of approaching a book that you're excited to read because someone that you love or respect told you that you should read is 100,000,000% different than just being told that you have to read something by someone that you don't know if you respect their opinion or not. So I get it. Sometimes the way school works doesn't make any of it clear why you should be doing any of this. And I feel like I've talked about this before. The why is the whole thing. And Celine Nguyen has an essay on Substack called No One Told Me About Proust, where she's basically talking about how she thought that people that read things like Proust were sort of being a little bit pretentious. Maybe they were just more serious readers and she would never be that, until someone that she really loved and respected suggested that she read it. And it ended up changing her entire life, changing the way that she thinks. She suddenly wanted to talk about Proust with everyone that she talked to. And then she starts writing about how our taste is really shaped by the people that we love. And if she would have approached Proust in a different setting, she may not have had the patience the text demanded from her. She says, "This is how love works. You may begin for pure reasons or egocentric and performative reasons, but in the end, it has to be earnest. Our lives are short. We should read what we love and spend time with those we love. And if the world is full of writers who can model a kind of reverse poptimism, an unfeigned enthusiasm for the greatest works, then I think we'll have the best possible chance of being transformed by art." So again, whatever reason you're beginning, I don't really care. If you are starting to read because you want to be perceived in the world as a person that's a reader, that's totally fine. It's probably not going to sustain you through an entire text, though. The thing that will sustain you through an entire text is that feeling of love. You either start to love the words on the page, or you love the person that told you that they loved the words on the page enough to be patient through the parts that aren't quite making sense yet. I saw a TikTok recently of, I think, an English teacher who did a student-led research project. So each student got to pick the topic that they wanted to research. And it was so clear how much like heart and effort went into every single one of their projects because they got to research what they were already innately interested in. And I just think that as we're talking about this, I want to make it clear that I am not just trying to dog on students. I don't think that this is an individual student's problem. I think that this is a systemic problem. I think the way schooling is structured right now and how it's all about standardized testing and every single student basically gets treated the same just doesn't make sense. Like, of course, students are fatigued and burnt out with all of this work. They're not actually being taught how to follow their curiosity and dig deeper into it. I don't feel like I truly understood the joy and the depth of building up an intellectual life for myself until I was out of school. And I experienced glimmers of it while I was in school, but I never felt like I fully, truly had the time and the space and the energy to pour into those moments and expand those moments. Now, as an adult, I feel like I have the space to create sort of like a self-made curriculum. And I think a lot of people experience this where it's like, yeah, when I was in school, the last thing that I wanted was to write an essay. But now that I'm out of school, I'm writing essays for fun. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that? And how can we imagine a better way forward and then demand it? Reading and writing is an incredible exercise in empathy and imagination that allows you to live multiple lives in one lifetime. ChatGPT summaries cannot do that for you. And I don't think we even have to talk about the fact that half the time it's delusional and it's dropping lies into your texts. Like fully, it's just lying. With all of that being said, I know that it's not rational to think that we're gonna put the cat back in the bag. Wait, is that the saying? Put the cat in the bag? In the box? I don't know what I'm saying right now. You know what I mean? It's not going to disappear. We're not getting rid of AI. It's here now. Okay, fine. And students are going to use it. Okay, fine. But when I'm speaking to you, I think we need to start thinking of reading as resistance. These big tech companies are not only trying to take away your jobs, they're trying to take away what it means fundamentally to be a human being, and you don't have to let them. Carl Hendricks has a Substack called Ultra Processed Minds, The End of Deep Reading and What It Costs Us. He says, to read slowly, carefully, attentively, without agenda or distraction, is to resist. In an economy built on speed and stimulus, deep reading becomes an act of principled refusal. It defies the algorithm's logic of efficiency, the newsfeed's velocity, the platform's hunger for engagement. It says, I will dwell here. I will think for myself. I will go deep when the world wants me shallow. And I'm sorry, I know that this episode is a lot of me quoting other people, but I think that makes total sense for an episode that's about reading, so whatever. So if the collective imperative towards reading and writing is this access to imagination and empathy, what is the individual imperative to go deep when the world wants us shallow? I think we have to become acutely aware of what we lose when we stay in the kiddie pool of attention. And to me, what I lose is my fundamental wonder about the world. And I feel like I talk about this literally all the time. I don't know if I can ever really stop. But when I've gone through bouts of giving entire days to TikTok and Instagram, which trust me, I've been there. I remember back during COVID, my screen time was like 8 hours a day. And there was just this persistent feeling of being at a dead end versus this feeling when I'm like deeply entrenched in my own sort of what I was talking about before, like self-made curriculum. There's an excitement about the endless possibilities in the world that I can't tap into any other way. And Rain Fisher Kwan, again, my girl, she writes about this in her new essay, Poser Ethics, which I had to laugh when I read this because it was so aligned with what I was already thinking about, talking about for this episode. But she says, the process of building an intellectual life on my own terms has maybe been the single greatest joy of my whole life and the most reliable source of meaning and purpose that I have. I sometimes literally burst into tears when I read certain essays or papers now, just because it feels so special to have been able to gain access to this part of myself, a part that craves knowledge for its own sake and finds a sometimes euphoric pleasure in the act of seeking it. I sometimes feel now a kind of precious, sacred aloneness, a feeling that no one is watching me, that I exist inside myself, that I have access to fleeting moments of true sincerity. It disappears at times, this feeling, but I always sense it will come back. This type of life at one point felt so foreign to me. I am so grateful to have it now. And that's the heart of it right there. When she was talking about literally bursting into tears because you're so happy to have access to this part of yourself, I have had a few nights lately where I've been alone in my room, reading a novel or reading poetry, and I've thought to myself, what a beautiful gift this is to love to be alone so much. I love reading other people's words and then translating it through my own experience. In the past, I do feel like alone time was something that I would dog myself down with FOMO, and I would see it as this transitory sort of waiting period until the next person came into my life to spice things up or something like that. But now it feels like alone time is actually something that I always want to really prioritize and respect, because reading in this way is creating a sense of interiority. It's really interesting because I think that reading can be one of the most communal things that we do. I mean, we think about like libraries and book clubs. Libraries are like the strongholds of our communities. And like I was saying before, how your taste in books is influenced by the people around you, the people that you love that are suggesting books and poetry to you. These things are inherently very connective. And at the same time that they connect you to other people, they connect you to yourself. And back to the Carl Hendrick essay that I was talking about a second ago, he was reading William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury. And he says the difficulty of the text had induced a kind of trance that came from a sustained focus, even an obsession. I remember finishing the last page and reeling from the book's harrowing final chapter. That encounter became a powerfully instructive moment for me in what reading could be: demanding, disorienting, but ultimately transformative. And I want to zoom in on that word demanding because there's something else that's pretty demanding too, and that's resistance, that's organizing, that's democracy. Newsguided has a substack called Freedom's Fragility, Democracy's Decline. She says democracy and freedom are not gifts, they are tasks. Efficiency without liberty is tyranny and fast forward. One must have lived in a world where people disappeared without explanation, where books were censored and thoughts punished, to understand that democracy's mess is its genius. Democracies may be noisy, imperfect, and often frustrating, but that is because they are real. They leave room for dissent, for delay, for disagreement, and in doing so, they leave room for humanity. Every time we outsource responsibility, we chip away at our freedom. Democracy, unlike authoritarianism, demands effort. It asks us to read, to question, to show up, to care. And with that little call to action, I want to talk about what's happening to libraries right now. You might be aware of this, you might not, but 125,000 libraries are in danger right now of being permanently defunded if we don't take action. The Institute of Museum and Library Services was just gutted by Trump. They previously had something like 75 employees, now they're down to about 12. That's the institution that's responsible for giving out grants and state funding to libraries, as well as individual grants to libraries. Now, if you're a person who hasn't frequented libraries or you're not much of a reader, I need you to know that libraries are not just a place that have a bunch of books. They're third spaces for the community. For many people, they're the only place that they can access internet. They offer so many classes in things like language learning, crafting, etc. They offer free tax return preparation, assistance for small business owners, seeds for gardeners, story time for little kids, access to printers and 3D printers, access to podcast equipment, seeds for gardeners, culture passes for things like tickets to museums and theater programs, free access to virtual issues of magazines and newspapers. Librarians go through extensive schooling, and I would say they're one of the most reliable sources of community care. I've put the link in my bio to the American Library Association where you can call your representatives. There's also an app, I believe it's called 5 Calls, that makes it so easy. It gives you a script, it tells you who to call. You can email your members of Congress or spread this on social media. But all of this to say, reading, writing, and maintaining the spaces where we do those things are essential things to think about when we're thinking about freedom. And I'm talking about freedom when it comes to maintaining sovereignty over your own mind, but I'm also talking about fighting for and protecting your neighbors. Okay, one last thing. I'm reading Pleasure Activism right now by Adrienne Marie Brown. There's a quote in here that I really want to read. She says, "I believe that all organizing is science fiction, that we are shaping the future we long for and have not yet experienced. I believe that we are in an imagination battle, and almost everything about how we orient towards our bodies is shaped by fearful imaginations. Imaginations that fear blackness, brownness, fatness, queerness, disability, difference. Our radical imagination is a tool for decolonization, for reclaiming our right to shape our lived reality." And that quote just makes me think of all of the times that I've spoken to people about discontent of all sorts of different things. I mean, take the school system, for example. You're like having a conversation with someone about how the school system is not really helping all children, and a lot of children seem to be left behind. And their response is just like, yeah, but that's just how it is, and utopia doesn't exist, so maybe you're asking for too much. And it's this lack of imagination that feels like running straight into a wall. And I think reading is one of the most powerful ways to collaboratively think about how we can design better systems and better futures with each other. And before we close out, because we have been talking about reading, I want to give a couple of reading recommendations. Of course, all of the essays that I've been talking about throughout this episode, I highly recommend, but I also want to recommend some full-length books to you that you can go to the library and check out today. The first one on my list is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I've talked about this book at length in the community building episode. Highly, highly recommend. It completely changed the way that I think about humans' relationship with nature, and it's just such a beautiful, enriching experience to read. Next up is They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hanif Abdurraqib. Hanif is a culture critic, and this is a series of essays about different albums. It is written in a way that feels like reading poetry, and he definitely gave me a newfound appreciation for certain artists through this book. Next is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This book is prolific. I will say, if you are already incredibly, incredibly anxious about everything happening in the world right now, maybe not the best time to pick up this book, but I really enjoyed it. Something a little lighter, I have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This is a very fun, romantic novel, and I don't feel like the characters are weirdly toxic and unhealthy. It's just a really refreshing, lovely, light read. You can take it to the beach. And then we've got In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a memoir in sort of an experimental style about a toxic queer relationship. It's haunting and enlightening, and I highly recommend. And I will leave you at that for now. Reminder, if you want more reading recommendations, I'm doing weekly media roundups on my newsletter, so I will have that linked in the episode description. I love y'all. I hope you find some time to read this week. Even better if you get the book from the library, and call your representatives. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, subscribe, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks.